Good evening, everyone. Welcome to Dread Time Stories. I'm your host, Dr. Phobia. And tonight, dear patients, it's time for me to administer you another round of real horror stories. Tonight's tales all have a common theme: creepy things that have happened on Christmas. So sit back, relax, and enjoy tonight's tale, Truly Terrifying, Volume 16. So I was digging through some photos the other day, and I came across one that unlocked a memory that, honestly, I had kind of pushed out of my mind. It was a photo of a Christmas tree and a fireplace in my living room, of the first house that I had bought when I was 25 years old. And that room held a lot of happy memories, but it also held a memory, like I said, that I really wanted to forget. But I suppose I can tell my story, and maybe that'll help me get it off my chest. So as previously stated, I bought that house when I was 25 years old. I was working a lot of hours to try to make sure that I kept the roof over my head, food on my table, and a vehicle to get back and forth to work. But I didn't mind, because it allowed me to be independent for once. On top of that, my parents were extremely proud of me. So I had to keep doing what I was doing. I remember that night well. It was Christmas Eve when I went to bed, with happy thoughts of seeing my family tomorrow, some of them actually seeing the house for the first time. But as I lay there in bed, getting ready to drift off to sleep, I heard a sound, and at first my brain couldn't figure out exactly what it was, but then it hit me like a ton of bricks. It was a sound that I had actually made a few times myself. You see, there's a window in the living room that sticks, and you really gotta push up hard on it. And when you do, it sort of makes this creaking groan kind of sound, like something moving does when it gets bound up for a second. And I knew that's exactly what I had heard. So I reached over to the nightstand, opened the top drawer, withdrew my .38 pistol, made sure it was loaded, and headed out the door. I quietly made my way down the hallway, repeating in the back of my mind to miss the creaky spot towards where the hallway turned into the living room. And I was able to do just that. But what I saw next made me freeze in place. I was 1,000% correct. The window was open, and the winter night air was blowing the curtain around. And in the light coming in from the curtain moving, I saw a man crouched in front of my Christmas tree. He was looking at all of my gifts and even had one of them in his hand. Even though I had a gun in my hand, I'm not gonna lie, I was still terrified for those first few moments. But then, a sense of anger washed over me. I thought about how hard I had worked all year to afford this house. I thought about how hard I had worked to get the gifts that were currently under that tree. And some scumbag was just gonna jump in through the window and steal them? Absolutely not. So I flipped on the living room light, cocked the hammer on the gun, and pointed it directly at the man. He turned around quickly and did something that I didn't expect him to do. He let out some sort of battle cry, if that's the best way to put it, and just straight up charged me. So, right, wrong, or indifferent, I had no choice. I pulled the trigger twice, hitting him twice in the chest. He fell on the floor and just stared up at me for a few seconds, and then did the most unbelievable thing. He started laughing at me, like deranged laughter, and then just closed his eyes and died. With adrenaline still coursing through my veins, I shakily made my way back to the bedroom, put the gun on my bed, grabbed my phone from the nightstand, and dialed 911. The police got there within 5 minutes. They surveyed the scene, had the paramedics pick up the body, and just like that, they were gone in less than a half an hour. I called my parents immediately after the police left and told them what had happened. The next day, my entire family rallied around me. I figured we would just locate to another person's house, but all of them showed up and helped me clean the blood off the floor and get everything back to a sense of normalcy. I tell people all the time I hit the lottery when it comes to my family, and what they did on Christmas morning is just another example of how true that is. Hard to believe that that happened over 7 years ago. I now live in a different house in a different state with my wife and our newborn. And I pray to God Almighty that I never have to have a repeat of that night in my living room ever again. So for Christmas of 2021, my dad and I decided to do the ultimate social distance. We rented a cabin and a hunting lease in Texas and decided to spend Christmas just away from people and hoping that one of us would bag a deer. But unfortunately, we saw something else that I still can't explain to this day. So we woke up early on Christmas Day and headed out to see what we could find. As we made our way out to the deer stand that the property owner had told us we could use, there was just a strange feeling in the air, like we were being watched from all directions. My dad was actually the first one to say something, but I could feel it long before the words ever escaped his lips. It's like we were hunting deer, but something else was hunting us, if that makes any sense. So we made it to the tree stand and got all set up, just waiting for the first rays of dawn to make its way across the Texas landscape. We began to notice how eerily quiet the area got around us. Now I know it's winter, so you're not going to get the chirping of bugs, and so you won't get the sounds of bugs, and the ones of birds are few and far between. But it was just very, very quiet. So as we looked around to see if there was any deer, that's when Dad broke the silence. He pointed his rifle at something, and then had me do the same. As I stared down the rifle through the scope, I was confused at first at what I saw, and then terrified. There was a man standing out in the middle of the field, naked, 100% as the day he was born. Just standing there, mouth hung open, wider than I've ever seen on a person, staring straight at us. As my dad and I pulled our faces away from the rifles and gave each other a "what the hell?" the man started screaming, like this guttural, primal scream, to the point where we thought his vocal cords would fail. Then, looking back through the scope, the man got down on all fours and started running around in a circle. To say Dad and I were creeped out is the understatement of the century, but we continued to watch through the scope. At some point, I saw movement off to our left. Thinking it might have been a deer, I swung the rifle that direction, and my mouth nearly hung open as far as the naked man's when I saw what was. It was a second man, exactly the same way, mouth agape, completely naked, and he too started letting out that guttural scream and running in circles. My dad then turned to the right, and he reported that he saw the same thing. Then we both looked behind us, and there was another one. 4 men, the same facial expression, same guttural scream, lack of clothing. We decided whatever was going on, we didn't want to be a part of it. So we made our way down onto the tree stand quickly and went between the man behind us and the man to our left as quietly as possible. Just when we thought we had gotten past them, the screaming stopped, and we suddenly heard what sounded like the underbrush being kicked up quickly behind us. My dad actually turned around and fired a warning shot straight through the trees. And a split second later, we heard that same guttural cry but it was slightly different this time. It sounded less aggressive and more like it was in pain. We ran like our lives depended on it, and as far as we knew, they did. We made it back to the cabin in one piece, packed up as much of our things as possible, threw them in the back of the truck, and laid rubber. We drove until we were at least an hour away from that place. Then Dad picked up his phone, and he tried to call the guy that we leased the land from. Never got a response. So Dad called the Texas State Police, and they went out there, and what they found was truly messed up. The guy that owned the property had a small cabin on the other end of it, and the landline that he still had, the line was down. That's why Dad could never get through. When they found the old man inside, it looked like he had been beaten half to death. He was still alive, but sadly ended up dying in the hospital. But I swear to you, on all that is holy, I saw what I saw, and so did my father. And it has changed us as people. I didn't believe in any of the supernatural or anything before, but now I'm starting to question everything that I once thought was fake. I just hope that no matter where I am in this world, I never come across any of those, what I'll call, feral people again. Well, there you have it, dear patients. Creepy Christmas stories. I hope you enjoyed them, and thank you for listening. Like I always say in closing, check under your bed, look in your closet, and sleep with the light on. The life you save may very well be your own. Merry Christmas, everyone.